Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of the Treasures of Public Health History series with the Plague Professor. So today we're going to talk about syphilis and the syphilis study in Tuskegee, Alabama that took place between 1932 and 1972, because I think this is a really important cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked racial bias in how we think about disease and how we practice medical research. So syphilis, until 1945, which syphilis, of course, is sexually transmitted infection, it lacked reliable treatments until 1945, because that's when penicillin became readily available to the public. So in 1932, the U.S. Public Health Service decided that they wanted to launch a study of the long-term effects of syphilis. So far, okay, that sounds reasonable. So they chose Tuskegee, Alabama as the location of their study and enrolled 399 men who had syphilis and 201 who did not. So again, okay, that sounds reasonable, except that this occurred at a time when the protocol for research on human subjects was pretty much non-existent. So the ethical guidelines were somewhat suspect or absent from the study. And how do we know this? Well, here's where things get dicey, because the men enrolled in the study were all black men. And the reasoning behind this, that's sort of implicit in the design of this study, is that the study's investigators, who were all white male doctors, were basically trying to use this study as confirmation that black men were inherently promiscuous and inherently diseased, and as a way of sort of classifying syphilis as the quintessential black disease. So, at any rate, it gets worse, though, because none of the men enrolled of this study were informed of their diagnosis. At no point were they told they had syphilis. They were simply told that they had bad blood, this sort of generalized concept of bad blood. Who knows what that even means? If that's not bad enough, the men in the study so treatment was withheld from the men in the study even after penicillin was made available in 1945, despite the fact that penicillin was widely known to effectively treat syphilis. No men in the study were given penicillin. And the study, by the way, did not end until 1972. So that's a lot of years of deliberately withholding medical treatment. So as a result, a lot of men in the study died or became blind, insane, or other severe complications. So you might be wondering, well, how could this happen? And why don't I know about this? Well, let me tell you a little bit more. Here's an excerpt from the recruitment letter that was used to recruit men for the study. At no point does it tell them they have syphilis. It just tells them, as you'll see as I've circled, that they had bad blood and that they would receive free medical treatment. So I think this letter is kind of important in helping us understand why men would choose to volunteer for this study. Because keep in mind that the vast majority of them lived below the poverty line. And so this was by design when the site of the study was chosen. I think they deliberately picked a population that was living in poverty, based on the premise that they would probably be more likely to comply if they were promised free medical treatment at a time when these men probably couldn't afford to go to the doctor. So that was very appealing. Except that it was all a lie. These men did not receive medical treatment. At no point was treatment ever the goal of the study. And in fact, a lot of the investigators of the study claimed that these men didn't deserve treatment because they were responsible for this disease because they were promiscuous. So there was a lot of kind of victim shaming, disease shaming involved. And, another one of the study's investigators said they could not, even after the introduction of penicillin, start treating the men because it would disrupt this unparalleled opportunity to study the effects of syphilis. So eventually, in 1972, the study was exposed by a reporter and a couple of doctors who'd been actually trying to shut it down for a few years. And there were a series of hearings to kind of unpack what had happened. And so they shut the study down, and one of the few good things that came out of this is that it led to establishing very strict guidelines for informed consent and research using human subjects. However, not a single one of the investigators of this study apologized, nor did anyone ever admit wrongdoing. They all claimed they were following the chain of command. And so what did this mean for the men who'd been enrolled in the study? Well, a number of them died. Others developed serious medical complications like blindness or insanity. And so there was some monetary compensation awarded, but so much of that money went to actually pay the lawyer fees that very little of that money went to actually compensate the victims and their families. So I think this is a really important cautionary tale about why we really need to think critically about the dangers of this type of racial bias and racist rhetoric informing how we think about disease. So that's it for today. I've also included a slide at the end with some recommended readings if you want to read more about this, because obviously for purposes of brevity I had to leave a lot out, even though I know I'm talking a lot. So I'll see you tomorrow. I haven't decided what I'm talking about tomorrow yet, but I've had requests for something about Pasteur and something about the plague. So we'll see. I'll have more for you tomorrow. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Bye from the Plague Professor.